Will, talk to me.
ABC Tuesday.
They took his daughter. She's coming home alive.
Will Trent, the series critics are calling powerful must-see TV, continues to thrill.
Shouldn't we strategize before we go in there?
If we screw up this case, a cop killer walks free.
With the riveting conclusion to a 2-part season premiere.
GBI!
Help me!
Get down!
Will Trent, all new Tuesday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Good evening, and on this episode of the Cardiff Central podcast, we discuss the loss to Perpignan, look forward to the Connacht game, and discuss that Wales squad. Also, stay tuned to listen to me slowly lose my tiny mind.
You're listening to the Cardiff Central podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cardiff Central Rugby podcast. As ever, I am Harley. I'm joined by Dan and Fraser. How are we doing, gentlemen?
All good, Tap.
Not bad, thank you.
Excellent. So let's wrap into it because we've got a fair few bits on the docket tonight. So first of all, some signing news. So we've had re-signings for Dav Hughes and Teddy Williams. I think that's everyone who's been since we recorded last week. But Cardiff have been having a habit of releasing them once you've recorded a podcast. So, gentlemen, two good signings. Teddy Williams, I mean, Dan, you've put out a piece about it, him being a talisman of Cardiff now.
Yeah, Teddy's a great re-signing, no matter how long or short it is, really, as long as he's sticking around, being first name on the team sheet all season, and really pleased that he stays as part of the pack going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Fraser, anything you want to add to Teddy, or do you want to move on to Dav as well?
I think, well, yeah, Teddy's just been a star this season. He's just growing match by match, so that's brilliant. Keeping him for, however long it is really, I think that's a brilliant signing. And then, David Hughes has been really solid this season. Every time he's come in or stepped into the breach, I think he's done a good job, so that's another good piece of business. I'm pretty pleased with both those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So wish them both luck. I mean, there was the rumor, the Owen Lloyd rumours. I don't know if we did, but as it's only a rumour, I'm not happy to not, even if it is a very firmly and Steph Thomas spoke out on the Rap account about us announcing it as rumour, which we kind of have to unless it's said otherwise. Anyone have a quick few thoughts of that? I know the guys on Saucepans and Sidesteps had a very strong opinion about Owen Lloyd and this situation. But
what was their opinion? I haven't heard that.
Along the lines of how ungrateful he's moved over here, couldn't have taken the number 1 jersey over Sam Costello, now he's left us. I would like to point out, it could be that his 2-year deal was up and Scarlett said, now we're going to go with Costello and Titcombe and some of their wonderful academy guys who apparently should be in the Wales squad straight away. But I don't know. For me,
he's a Cardiff boy. He probably still lives here, I'd have thought. I know his family are all local Cardiff. So if the opportunity to come back, and obviously he's worked with Sheedy before, so that's somebody he knows well in that fly half room. Likely that DB is leaving us, so there's an opportunity there to come in and get decent minutes. And I don't know if he will have worked with Jockey. Maybe he's come across him at some point, whether at Bristol or when Jockey stepped up to Wales briefly, or. But yeah, from a Cardiff point of view, I think it'd be a really good signing, adds good depth, good versatility to the back line, suits our style of play. Somehow he's still only 23. I'm sure he made his debut for Bristol about 10 years ago. I don't quite know, he's still so young. But I'd be pleased with that, certainly.
Yeah, I'd be pretty pleased with Owen Lloyd if we can get him, or if that is a true fact. I mean, his versatility to play basically any position in the back line to, better or worse standard, but still like the ability to do that is pretty special. I think he on his day, obviously, we all know he can kind of pull a rabbit out of a hat and can do things that are really impressive. It's just his consistency and his decision making can be a bit wild. But even so, as you say, he's still young, so he can still learn that, or develop that skill, and there's a lot of potential there. So I'd be pretty pleased if that's the case, and he does come back to us.
And I think the thing for me, Hugh pointed out on Scott's pod was he seems to have all his best games against Cardiff, so hopefully he'll have loads of good games for Cardiff, and it's just having Cardiff on the field that supercharges him. Right, so moving on, so we've had a little bit of age grade rugby. So I have not been able to watch this first one because it was on at Cap whilst it wasn't on display, and it was on whilst I was driving back down to Devon. So Wales under-20s beat the regional select under-23s team, which you kind of hope would happen, as the under-23 team seemed to sort of appear out of nowhere about 2 days before the game, and the under-20s have been in camp for a bit and had a couple of warm-up games against Scotland under-20s. Dan, you've seen the highlights at least. Any blue and blacks who stood out during that game?
Was plenty good number involved. Harry Wild, Steph Manuel, Elijah Evans all played. I think Sean Davis was on the bench as well, the young scrum half. So, and there was a good number of lads involved in that under-23s team as well. A couple of guys from the Rags. Ethan Phillips was in there, second row. Joe Cowell played. I think Lucas De La Rue was involved in the back row as well. So, and then that team was coached, assistant coached by Dan Fish and Craig Everett from the academy and from the Rags as well. So it was good to get guys involved. Yeah, like I said, I think they'd had 3 training sessions before they played that game on Friday, the under-23s. So you would expect the under-20s to have won, but good. I think altogether, if you add the lads who were part of our pathway and then have left for elsewhere, and sneak 2 guys in Ethan Phillips and Gethin Cannon who went to university in Cardiff and have played for the Rags, then I think over half of the 50 odd players involved across the 2 teams were sort of Cardiff pathway originals or graduates. So it shows the size of depth available to us if we can hold on to all of these players. Certainly, there's something. I've long thought that we can build something Leinsterish with the amount of players that come through our pathway, and when we're providing 26 or so of 50 odd players playing in an under-20/under-23s game, it definitely the evidence is there for that. But comes to the question of clinging on to them. But no, for the guys that are still involved in our pathway, I think we'll see quite a lot of that 3/4 line of Wild, Emmanuel, and Elijah Evans in the upcoming under-26 Nations, and see if they play together again. There's the reverse game, under-23s and under-20s. Well, I don't know if you can reverse because they're all at home, really, but they're playing at Llandudno again on Friday. So.
Yeah, excellent news. And then other pathway news: our under-20s beats RGC under-20s.
18s.
Under 18s, apologies. It's been a hell of a day. Yeah, so it's nice that the under-20 and the fuck's sake, the under-18 season, the under-18 season is kicking off. So starting to get into the swing of things. Yeah, so be hopeful seeing what the even younger blue and blacks are doing. So we keep you up to date in more details, like I said. Unfortunately, I haven't got the details in there for me for now. And then last sort of non-Cardiff rugby team I want to just bring out is Gwalior Lightning. They snuck a win against Glasgow on the weekend up in their new home of Ystad Mynach, which I'll be honest, it clearly that's the place that seems to be making the Dragons as bad as they are, because Gwalior were playing much better than that beforehand before they started for a few games down there. Yeah, I don't know if you 2 caught the game, but it was just quite nice to see. No Gwennon Hopkins in this one, so we had Bethan Lewis back in late. And as much as I disagree with some of her opinions on non-white people, hell of a player, deserved player of the match. Yeah, it was a good game. I mean, I'll be honest, I think Glasgow would be quite upset that they didn't get the win there, but hey, it leaves us 3 wins out of 4, which is, in a 10 round league is going to be good starting point. Did you 2 catch it or no?
I saw they'd won in the last minute, but I haven't seen any of the Celtic Challenge stuff this season so far. No.
Yeah. So just a sort of all these games are on BBC. You usually have to go in, if you're going to the iPlayer, you've got to go into category sport. Usually doesn't pop up until about 5 minutes before it comes up. So be patient, stick with it. And their next game is on the weekend. Hoping one of you guys would have something to say about it.
Sorry.
So I could quickly double check.
And
Oh no, it might be a bye week this week. This is why people don't shift your notes between two different places, or have them up, or have them on the computer. Anyway, so that's that. So just before we move on to the game last on Saturday, so we asked you for your 3-word thoughts. So I've got a selection. So yeah, there's some general themes. So on the blue sky, we had Gareth Rhys-Collins, who decided to give us a trio of 3-word thoughts. Should have won, cheap choice conceded, and yet more injuries. I think that sums it up. Hopsy says abysmally coached pack. I think it's a bit unfair, but there we go. And then onto the X, we've got not good enough, weak team selection, win against Connacht. That's Cardiff Blues UAE. Someone needs to remind him that your name needs to change to suit the branding, my friend. Friend of the pod, always willing to give his opinion. Stupidity cost us from Big T. Graham Price says basic errors with hand clap. That's 2 words. And I don't know if that's praying for more basic errors or praying against them. You didn't make that one clear. Ben Bryan said important bonus point and then did a massive essay. So unfortunately, that doesn't count. Please remember to keep it to 3 words or fewer. We will allow emojis, but let's try and keep it down because Lee's starting to take the piss out of Cardiff fans' inability to count. Right. So moving on to the game. So we lost out in Perpignan. Not a particularly great game, I would say. I think set piece struggled at various points. I thought Reece Barrett did quite well after the first couple of scrums, sort of going against him. He seemed to sort of get to grips with the game, and then as soon as he came off, then we sort of reset back. As soon as the front row swapped over, it seemed like Will Davis-King then started having some of the issues. Do we think that was one that got away, or do we think we were lucky to get that losing bonus point?
I think I'd agree that was one that got away to some extent. I mean, I think throughout the match, obviously you kind of mentioned it, our pack was struggling in the scrum. I mean, it was all right in the first half and then a little bit worse in the second half, a bit iffy. I think their power and their subs made a big difference. But even then, I think we did well in the first half against the wind and kind of kept it tight. They scored that one good try. Their wingers were brilliant throughout. I've forgotten one of their wingers was unbelievable. I've forgotten his name. But I think we played well in bits, and it seems like that's a trend throughout the season, is that we can kind of, when we get the good ball and we put stuff together, we look really dangerous. We can't consistently do it for a whole game. I think Lilo was brilliant coming back in the team and obviously scored that first try with a brilliant line and then kind of created the second try with his offload. I thought he was like, his decision making is so good. Obviously, he's not got I don't want to keep going on about how good he is, but he's not got the stamina and like the physicality he used to have, but his decision making is brilliant. And then I think the second half we were in it, but they brought on their subs, and I think we were kind of up against the wall a little bit. There was a good Nakalevu, I think his name was, the guy who came on as a centre, who looked like a front row, and Thanos. He looked like, I think he's the Fijian Thanos, is what I imagine him. And he was unreal. He was just too big to play that position. It didn't feel very fair. But I think, yeah, sorry, to kind of sum it up, I think with a bit more precision and consistency, we could have got the win. I think there was a chance in the last 10 minutes for us to have done that, but we kind of just let it kind of fall away, but not with any significant issues, but just like didn't take the opportunities. It was unusual. But a losing bonus point is still positive away in France, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't disagree with any of that. I think the big issue is probably the one major thing that I think Jockey touched on after the game was just like the inability to turn good field position into points, and obviously a lot of that comes back to Perpignan were large. They were a large team, and as you said, they got larger as well, which is unusual. Like as those subs came on, I mean that 22 was a joke size of bloke. But what I think if I was Cardiff, I think it's not the first time this happened to us, and it won't be the last time either. But we get into the red zone and sort of pummel away a little bit, flicking the ball from the base to the first ball carrier or we pick and go and we don't get anywhere, we've got to come up with a plan B there, because Perpignan actually were quite vulnerable in midfield, I thought, particularly in the starting team. Ray was brilliant and he made it look easy, but like Perpignan weren't exactly closing us down through that midfield either. There was room to attack into there, and we struggled to really exploit that. I thought some of our decision making was a little bit odd. Like they go down to 14 men, we kick to the corner, they've lost their 10, so they're one short in the backs, and then we try and drive and maul them over and add all the backs into it. And you're sort of like, well, we've got the extra man out wide. We know they're a bit vulnerable in midfield. Why not, set up a driving maul, keep them a bit narrow to start with, pick and go, but then play into midfield, not put all your eggs in the basket of trying to drive a team over who we've bounced off of the entire game so far. And then it was just a couple of errors, really. Not for the first time this season, particularly on the back of when we scored points. We score the first try, and then we get turned over from receiving the kickoff, and then Tina Stabia kicks penalty, and we don't even get a hand on that kickoff. They take it unopposed, just beyond the 10-meter line. And then in phase play, then I thought it looked like Tina Stabia and Rory Jennings were players who hadn't played too much this season and probably had never played together. I don't recall them being on the pitch at the same time so far this season. So not to like blame those two in particular, but I think the backs never really got into a proper rhythm because it was like a very mixed up and a very new back line. And that is perhaps a little bit of a learning thing for the coaches, in that, you try and get consistency in selection and stick with some guys, but then if you're just going to drop them all in for one game then and give them a go in Europe, like Jockey said they would, they're not going to be able to hit the ground running because they just aren't match sharp. And then you end up as well with the situation which has happened for De Beer a couple of times this season. He's been dropped in out of nowhere and he's picked up a knock. And last season he's playing regularly. You're used to your body, you get used to that contact, and you're able to sort of ride out a couple of the little niggles. This now, where he's not so used to the contact and he's not getting involved in games so regularly, ends up picking up more injuries. So it was one that we definitely could and should have won. But on the flip side, I think we said on the pod last week, if you offered me a losing bonus point now, I'd take it. So we got that sorted. Everything's still in our hands going into the last round of games. Like you said, Harley, good experience for Rhys Barrett. I think he'll take a lot from that. More good experience for Tom Bowen as well. A couple of guys got a bit of game time where they haven't had a lot of minutes this season. And we managed to rest a lot of key guys going into this weekend as well. So it's not the end of the world, certainly, but it was a frustrating one on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely with you. And I have just checked. Rory Jones and Tina Stabia have not played at all together this season.
Yeah.
They've not even been in the same. They've not been in the same 23s. Like, it's not even been. Like if you have a look at it, it's like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, and they fit and they slot perfectly together. Apart from the last round, it's mad. Thanks again, as always, to CRFC fans who I quite frequently nick stats from. So that was a bit of a mad one. I actually thought Tinas was quite good. I'm not so sure about how he's orchestrating the attack, but I thought actually in defence he was pretty phenomenal. He was doing what we said he would do. I think we did miss Ben Thomas. I know he came off. Actually, no, did he come off the bench?
He came on for Tinas in the last couple of minutes, but it was obvious that they didn't want to bring him on. It was only because Tinas got injured that he was on the pitch.
Yeah, but even then, it wasn't even like having Ben Thomas there to run the game so Tinas can do what Tinas does well. So it's a bit of a shocker. I mean, so the thing is, we still can get a home knockout in Europe. It will be third place at best, so we're looking at we'd have to take on one of the Challenge Cup teams dropping down. Champions Cup's dropping down. So what we're going to need is a bonus point win against Connacht, and hoping that they're basically not all that arse because they're almost guaranteed home ties to the semi-final. But I mean, it's always a tasty game, Cardiff Connacht. So it's one of my favourite fixtures. Actually, I much prefer it to any of the derbies.
Controversial.
No, that's not saying. That's not saying much, to be honest. My feelings on Welsh derbies are very much on the record. So they're flying high. For them, it's probably going to be the last chance they see the likes of Mac Hansen, Finley Beagham. Although I think Mac's picked up him a lot.
He's suspended, isn't he? Because he had
He's
a dig at the
suspended.
referee. Yeah,
He basically said the
retired
quiet bit out loud.
Yeah.
He got a ban for saying the quiet bit out loud of what we all think and what we all want to say about the referee. But yeah, so yeah, they're a bit of a mixed bag, Connacht, this season. When they've been good, they've been great. So Challenge Cup, they've had some fantastic results. URC less so. So we said on wrap, this is either going to end up being something like a 3-3 game or a 33-3 game, and then maybe a point or two either side. How we both see. Fraser, we'll start with you. How are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, mixed. I'm not sure. I think it'll be quite an entertaining game. I mean, I don't know what the weather's like. It's probably going to be cold and raining, but I think, yeah, I reckon it'll be quite an entertaining game. It'll be close. I can't see us, coming away easily with a win against Connacht. I mean, they're up and down, but obviously played quite well in the Challenge Cup. I haven't really seen much of them this year. I think will we still have all our Wales squad players available to play?
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
So I think if we just stack the team with, our strongest team, I think, use them up. That'll be the last game, I suppose, before they go into camp. Hopefully with them playing full strength team more or less, I guess, minus injuries. I think I'd be like quietly confident we can get the win. I'm not sure about a bonus point victory, but I think we'll definitely we'll probably come out on top. Or I feel we can against Connacht, but it'll be quite an entertaining game. I'm not sure. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, a lot of it obviously depends on what Connacht do turn up. They've topped the group, but they'll probably want a home spot all the way through. Matt Hansen's unavailable. I wonder if somebody like Aki might be rested to have sort of 2 full weeks off going into Six Nations camp. He played last week in Lyon. He's played both of the interprovincial derbies over the festive period, so they might leave him at home. But I mean, they've still got a lot of really top quality players. If you look down their squad, Prendergast has been in and around the Ireland squad. Beelum has played a lot of rugby for Ireland over the last sort of 12 months. Santi Cordero at fullback is proper electric player. I think they've got JJ Hanrahan back fit this weekend, who's sort of quite a decent game manager at 10 there. So there's certainly more depth in this Connacht squad than previously, where you used to think, oh, they're the sort of the runt of the Irish litter and they sort of pick up whoever's just available. But weather looks pretty decent. Just had a quick check. So quite dry on Friday night, which will suit us. I think, yeah, we'll go pretty fully loaded. And games against Connacht for us are all it's always quite close because we're like really similar in sort of like the way we want to play. We've got a solid pack that isn't ever sort of massive or is going to bully an opposition. We've got backs who are quick and like to move the ball. So it generally comes down to sort of it's quite tight on the night, sort of one score here or there. I feel like at home we do have a bit of an advantage over them. And I think with us needing a result, I'd like to think that we go out and really put in a statement in the first half and put some points on the board. And if that's the case and Connacht know that they've topped the group and they don't really need this, it might sort of kill them a little bit at halftime and they just kind of go through the motions. So, yeah, that's what I'd hope. But I do think it will be a really good game, actually, a really good game to watch on Friday.
Really on the ball today. Yeah, so should we just quickly go through? So we both said so you guys have said fully loaded. I mean, to be honest, I'm sort of semi half-assed about it and thinking, do we just go same again? But it's a good point. We are going to be losing a few of our Wales internationals when we go on to that when we talk about the Wales squad in a few minutes. Shall we just go through that team then? So if we're going fully loaded, I'm guessing front row of Doma, Hughes, Azarati.
Well, injury news says that Doma's probably injured still. He was meant to play last week and withdrew. And a bit more Instagram sleuthing. It's back. They've I didn't see Doma in any of the training footage that they've put out today, so I'd question whether Doma's available. I don't think Faletau will be available. Gatland said after his Wales squad comments that the physios have told him that Faletau should be available for the first game of the Six Nations. So if he's only should by then, it's unlikely we'll be seeing him on Friday, I'd have thought. Thomas Young picked up a knock and was meant to be playing last week, but didn't, but was in training on the clip they've put out, so he might be available. I think Grace is unlikely. I suspect he went into the concussion protocol after Saturday.
Yeah, it'd be too short, man.
Yeah, so but Hamer Webb should be back. He'll be out of his 12 days, and he was training, so I think he'll be available. Trying to think who else I'd noted on the injury thing was obviously De Beers looks like he's done his ankle ligaments, so he's going to be out for a little while. And then Aled Davis went off with what looked to me to be a bit of a groin issue potentially. So I didn't see him in any of the training footage, so I think you probably assume that he's injured as well. The only good piece of news, which I don't think he'll be back this weekend, I think would be too short, but Evan Daniel was back doing a bit of training in the footage from this week, so hopefully he'll be available come Six Nations time. But yeah, there's for Loosehead, I think it's probably going to be Barrett and Southworth as the two available again. And
Say Mulder, or would you stop Southworth?
I think I think it suits having the young lad starting, and then if it's going horribly wrong, you can hook him rather than if Southwest Start gets injured after 10 and then you're asking the young guy to do a full 70 minutes.
I suppose you got the added thing of having Azra, the more experienced tight head with him as well.
Yeah.
So him, Azra, Barrett and Azrati, and then we're going to go with the rule of switching them around. Dav Hughes starting.
Yeah, I thought Dav was really good off the bench last week as well. Again,
Yeah,
and
excellent.
Lloyd gives him a little bit of a rest before Wales camp as well.
Yeah. Right, second row, and please try and tell me why it isn't going to be Teddy Williams and Josh McNally.
I think we conceded a try. Did he concede a try as soon as Josh McNally came off the pitch on the weekend? I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Might not be far off. Yeah.
So he has to play. Simply must.
So I mean, I was being slightly facetious with it, but I'm just going to write McNally and Teddy in because
just may as well Sharpie them in at this point. Even like when the Six Nations time, we'll hook him back or something, like kidnap him.
Well, we're basically saying no. We want the same treatment as the English sides. If he's not in the matchday 23, he's coming back. All right, and then so Fraser, do you want to talk through who you think we're going to have for back row?
I guess, yeah, if Faletau's injured, then it's probably going to be both from Big Al, and then if Thomas Young is fit, maybe get him in, but if not, then Dan Thomas again. And again, yeah, shout out to Dan Thomas's hair and beard. It looked pretty good. It's challenging.
He had a very good game as well. He topped a fair few stats. Always there or thereabouts in a lot as well for the game.
He's always good. I love Dan Thomas. It's like even Thomas Young or Dan Thomas, I'm happy with either, really. Fitness, I suppose.
Any calls for anyone else?
No, I go with that as well. I wonder if Jockey might consider both them at 8 and then Man at 6. I don't think I would predict put that down. I think I'd stick with both them, Young and Lawrence for our thing. But I just wonder if that might be a consideration as well, where Connacht aren't the biggest pack. It'll be a bit more of a mobile game, whether they might go with that. But
and you're adding a line-out option.
Yeah.
Because one thing is we both equally struggle at line-out time. Another similarity between Cardiff and Connacht. And we're probably more likely to win the other team's line-out.
Alex Mann was good as well against. I thought he played really well against.
I thought he was starting to show some of that physical promise, and he started to turn some of his dickhead energy into actual usable shithousery.
Yeah. So,
yeah, big fan of that. Halfbacks, well, if we're saying Aled's out, do you start Mulder or do we go straight to Bevan? We start with the more controlling, keep Mulder as your impact? Because I thought it actually had good impact last week, but I'm not sure I trust him with 60.
Yeah, I'll go Bevan. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think it'll be Bevan, but there is a case to, if Davis is out for a few weeks, Mulder's going to have to play a lot in Six Nations time. He's going to have to start against Sharks the week after. He's going to have to play both of the Irish away games during the Six Nations. So there is a sort of school of thought that says put Mulder in now and give him as many minutes as possible. Because I agree, he looks sharp, but I think it'll be Bevan who does start.
Yeah, Bevan Sheedy. Again, who wants to deal with the outside backs? Who's fit? And why is the centre partnership going to be Ben Thomas and Ray Leela?
It's the same as the second row, isn't it? It's like, it just is Ben and Ray. And then I assume it'll be Gabe, Hamer, Webb, and Adams onto the wing, providing that Adams is available. I didn't actually see him in any of the clips on the training thing, but I assume he was just rested last week rather than anything. So Hamer, Webb, Adams, and then probably before Monday, I'd have said Beetham to start, but now Winnett's been left out of the Wales squad. I wonder if there's maybe something that says, oh, you should start him just to show that the club still got confidence in him rather than drop him from the Wales squad and the Cardiff 15 in the same week might generate a few headlines. But I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
I was thinking of if we're going strongest 15, we're putting Winnett in. And I think if Beetham was going to start a game, it would have been the Perpignan game where we're going to be hoping to pin people back. So that's the thing. That was my thinking there. So if we move on to our bench, we sort of already discussed our bench front row of Evan Lloyd, Danny Southworth, and Will Davis-King.
I wonder if Littrick comes back in.
I don't know if he's fit. That was
he was in the training video. Okay. So I'll
go with that because I'd like someone who can scrummage.
Yeah.
Works me. And then Seb Davis, 19 jersey. Unless Ben Donald's made a miraculous recovery and no one's talked us.
I think he said he was doing a Q&A in the clubhouse where they were showing the game on Saturday, and he said he was 4 to 6 weeks away or something like that, I think.
That's not so bad. And then the number 20 jersey, probably. I mean, if we've got both him young and Big Al, should we chuck Man on there?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Or do you think Big Mac, another game for Big Mac?
I was reliably informed that Big Mac actually wasn't even 100% fit last week, and it was only because Young and Falatau had been struck down in the week that he was pretty much the only guy left to sort of sit on the bench. So
you mean we missed a chance for a 4-4 split? Not that we had 4 fit backs either.
Yeah, I think it would have been a 4-3, go back to the old days. So no, I would assume it would be Man in that 20 jersey, and that they give Mac another week to get right after last week before he'd be involved a bit more over the Six Nations period, you'd have thought.
Yeah. Right then. Maldron 21. And then for 22-23, we're probably going to be looking at a sort of century person and a back three. Ben Thomas covering 10.
Yeah.
Tinas is down.
Jennings and Beetham, I guess, are the two.
That's sort of what I'm thinking. I'm trying to think of who else it could be, because I think everyone else is.
They could Beetham and Bow in it, or Jennings and Bow in it, and have. But it's quite, the problem with Bowen on the bench is that, I mean, he is just a winger. Like it's quite a restrictive option as in terms of cover. And I always think that, like, if the game's not going your way, changing the winger tends not to have much of an impact on that, to be honest. With respect to wingers everywhere.
I need to get you and Hugh to do a podcast on the most pointless players that on the best. I said Hugh's now adamant that the 5-3 is redundant and everyone should be 6-2 unless they can do 7-1. He also argued Cardiff should do a 7-1.
Yeah, you know what would happen though is that all five starting backs would go down within 10 minutes if we ever did a 7-1.
Yeah, but then we'd finally get to see Thomas Young on the wing and Seb in the centres. So I'd actually like that. More forwards better. Who are we going to go for? We're going to go Jennings and Beetham?
Yeah, I reckon.
Just on account of, I don't know who else it'd be.
Tom Nolan, again, he had a good game against Perpignan.
I just thought, I know, Hennessy's still cup tied, isn't he? He wouldn't be.
Yeah, he's not here.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Bowen did. I thought he did particularly well again. I mean, that right winger was ginormous as well, but he wasn't afraid to go low and try and chop him down as well. Which, I mean, usually you see young guys just sort of give him a brief hug and then fall off him, and oh well, I tried, but he and I liked the it didn't quite work out, but he sort of tried a little nudge through from inside our own half, and half regathered it and couldn't quite cling on. But I just like the confidence of an 18-year-old on his second appearance to be like, no, bollocks to it, I'm in my own half, I'm going to kick through and chase it.
I need
I
this.
imagine there might have been a stern word said by one of the more senior heads, but I thought you looked quite confident and assured, very much like a young 18-year-old who's had 2 professional appearances. But I think so. Our proposed match day 23 is in the 15 jersey: Cam Winnett, Gabe Hamer-Webb, Razor Ray Lilo, Ben Thomas, Josh Adams, Callum Sheedy, Ellis Bevan. And then in the pack, we've got Reece Barrett, Dad Hughes, Kieran Azarati, McNally, and Teddy Williams in the second row, with a back row of James Botham, Thomas Young, if fit, if not Dan Thomas, and number 8, Big Al. And then in the bench, we've got Evan Lloyd, Danny Southworth, Reece Litterick, Seb Davis, Alex Mann, Johan Mulder, Roy Jennings, and Jacob Beetham. I think that's a pretty good side. And yes, I'm keeping in the hedging bets on the young Dan Thomas thing, just because I think with Connacht, I think we're going to have their attacking breakdown is quite vulnerable. So I think Young is probably going to be a better choice of a 7 there.
Mm-hmm.
We may not necessarily need the chopping and just stopping power so much. Right, so before we move on to the Wales squad, I just want to take a moment to say that if you are enjoying this podcast and you are still listening to our rantings and ramblings, why not give us a like on YouTube or your podcast, nice review on your podcast provider, or you can follow us on Blue Sky, Twitter, and Facebook. There's also the Rap TikTok account, which we have very little content on because none of us particularly have time to make videos for it. Anyway, moving on to the pod. So Cardiff have once again the largest contingent of players in the Wales squad with 8. But the big thing that we're all talking about from a Cardiff perspective is one name who isn't in there, and that is Cam Winnett, and that's kind of where I want to start first of all. But first of all, we do have to congratulate everyone who's been called up for Wales. Great honour. Bloody blah. Gatland, I still think has dementia and no one's worked it out yet. But Cam Winnett, arguably one of the few highlights of Wales this last year. Most people considered him like one of the few, one of our best player, certainly one of our best backs. What sense in leaving him at home this time?
I think, well, based on what I've kind of heard him say and who he selected, I guess it's mainly down to the aerial game, right? And the fact that Ellis Mee and Tommy Rogers, because I guess they would be the 2 that you'd be questioning. That's where Cam Winnett would come in for, I guess. They are really good in the air, to be fair. They are quite good under the high ball. And with that, is that law change just happening for Six Nations, the one where it has to be a 1-to-1, or has that already been in place? But yeah, I think that. No, sorry.
I don't even know if it's like a law change as such, but I think it's like a focus for the international referees. It creeps in a little bit. I seem to remember away at Edinburgh, both teams got pinged quite a lot in our game for, what do they call it? Not transporting, shepherding. That's it. Yeah. But yeah, it's certainly hotter in international rugby than it is at club rugby.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, that's the fundamental reason that Gatland has for that difference. I'm not sure if he's got thought more about it than that. It's just aerial superiority, and to be fair to Ellis Mee and Tom Rogers, they are good in the air, and so is Cam Winnett. I don't think he's bad in the air, but I think it's just that dominance, just more security under that high ball, I suppose, is where I'm seeing his thoughts and what he's kind of mentioned.
I mean, the big one for me was he cited he missed a tackle against South Africa. He's not the first. I mean, if he dropped every player who missed a tackle against South Africa that day, most of that squad shouldn't be there because they all missed key tackles. I mean, it was just a very bad day. Some people have pointed out that his defence hasn't been where it probably needs to be last week, even in Cardiff jersey. But still, someone that talented and someone who can work both as a distributor and a strike runner, I feel like. I mean, one thing I did point out on the wrap is Gatland seems obsessed with finding a fullback, and it seems to be for whatever reason, Cam's face doesn't fit, and he was only picked for last year because there was no one else at the time, with Sanjay being injured or unavailable. So now he's resorted to taking Ellis Mee, who's never, as far as we found out, he's actually never played fullback certainly at senior level, maybe like very early age grade. One thing he is, though, is 6'4", and I think the only reason he's been put into the squad is because we've got George North Mark IV now, of a big lad, and he's going to try and make him bigger, just so we can have him battering down doors. And that, Dan, what's your thoughts on this? And then we'll move on to the squad as a whole.
Yeah, I think it is true to say that Winnett so far this season hasn't been quite at the heights of last season. But he's certainly not been playing badly by any stretch of the imagination. He's been like sort of somewhere between solid and good in every outing. I think he's still only 22. Same about Johan Lloyd earlier. Still very much learning his game and developing. He's been Gatlanded a little bit in that I think you can sort of see the internal like quandary that he has whenever he gets on the outside, and there's his natural instinct is to keep ball in hand and play and run, and then there's the sort of Gatland territory and kick in and turn the opposition, and he has put boot to ball quite a lot more in those positions this year and turned teams around and nudged him behind. Sometimes worked out well, sometimes sort of gives possession away a bit cheaply, but I certainly think there would have been a question mark of whether he would have started the first test like away at France. I could have got on board with a debate about that, whether you went with Sanjay over him in Paris, but I'm surprised he's not in the squad at all. I think that there is, I agree that like in terms of back three, it's Roger and me you've gotten over him, but I mean you could have. Do we need both Watkin and Tompkins in the centre? You could have dropped the centre and added an extra back three player there potentially. So I think there was ways you could have worked him in still, because ultimately that squad, lots of focus on the 10 jerseys we're getting into, about only one out and out 10 as such. But there is also only one out and out 15 in Liam Williams in that squad. And even he's been playing on the wing for Saracens a bit in his short stint there. So Winnett is I am surprised, but the flip side of the whole thing, of course, is that it's a bit of a boost for Cardiff to have him available for 2 months now in some quite important games, and with Beetham probably needed to cover 10 a bit more in De Beer's absence as well. It certainly adds a bit more depth and resilience to our squad, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's in the squad by the end of the campaign as well. I think Liam is relatively injury prone, and they'll have to manage him quite closely. He'll also have to go back to Saracens, so may play a bit there. And if there is any sort of opening in that back three, you think Winnett was the next cab off the rank. So hopefully the club. I thought their tweet was quite good, where they sort of said, "Here's Cam Winnett, the top try assister of the season so far," in the hour after he got dropped, and that they're putting the arm around him and making sure that it's a case of use this as a force for good rather than a force to get your head down and overthink it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now moving on to the Blue and Blacks who are in the squad. So we've got in hookers, we've got Evan Lloyd, we've got Kieran Azrati on prop. Teddy Williams is making appearance second row. Then we have James Botham, who I think is a well-deserved call-up. I think for me, he was probably one of my first names in the squad. We have Ellis Bevan, Ben Thomas, who's listed as a 10. Then we have Josh Adams. Who else am I missing? There's definitely a name I'm missing there.
Yeah, there is.
Salato.
Yeah, of course.
Felipe Felipe.
Just one of the greatest ever players.
Just one of the greatest ever players. It just sometimes I need to pinch myself to remind myself he plays for Cardiff now. It's just like a weird dream. I think that's pretty much it. Other than Winnett, any arguments for anyone else you might have seen in there? For me, said Winnett was probably the only one. I mean, if Domachevsky's injured again, maybe, but it seems like maybe Gatland was actually happy with the balance of his loose heads. Interestingly, you can have a front row of Nicky Smith, Evan Lloyd, and Kieran Azrati, and that would be the shortest and lightest front row, but they are all exactly the same height.
Oh, okay.
Which is just a weird stat I found whilst looking at the squad the other night.
I think Liam Belcher would have got in I reckon if he hadn't been injured, if he just came back a couple of weeks ago, obviously, and got injured again, I think he would probably make the squads if that hadn't happened. Which
Who
is
do you think he'd have gone in ahead of? Do you think he would have
Harry.
taken the Sam Parry spot? Or
I think he would have taken his spot. I know he's. I don't know. I think, yeah, for years he's been solid for us, hasn't he? And I feel like this would have been his moment because we're so lacking in depth and hooker, and obviously Gatland's had his spat with Sam Parry, and he's had to confront that. I don't know if he really wanted to, and if Belcher was there, I think he might have got in. I don't know what you guys think about that.
That is 100% true, by the way, that if Belcher was available, then Gatland would have been like, bollocks, am I picking up the phone to Sam Parry and seeing what it's about there? But because you got no one else who's like, Sam, will you come back, please? Like that. If there was any way he could have avoided that phone call, he absolutely would have.
Yeah.
you know full well Gatland will call up another. Like if Elliot D goes down, Gatland will call someone else. So he's going to be like, hang on, is that Tua Piloto kid still available?
Yeah, Parry's just using tackle bags again. He's doing that whole Six Nations. He's not getting that.
I mean, one player I hope isn't just been holding tackle bags all thing is Teddy Williams, who is the only Welsh-based second row picked, which for me is mad given Gatland's emphasis on training. And like I don't know how much training, so he's basically going to be twiddling in the thumbs because there's not going to be any scrum or line out training because everyone else is away. It's a bit of there's so many baffling calls, and Gatland sort of said, "Oh yeah, we've got to have we've picked these English-based players, and they're likely to play because, we haven't picked so and so because we picked these English players, so they've got to, and if we don't pick them, then they've got to go back." And you're like, well, then don't pick them.
The inclusion of Shunza in that is, I think, particularly odd in that he's just not playing for Exeter, and I'm a big fan of his. Like I know a lot of people like kind of queue up to profess how they don't rate him and he's just large or whatever. But I think there's a lot to him. We've discussed it before about how he's like sort of misunderstood as a player just because he is huge, but he's actually a very good technical player. Also because there might be an opportunity for Cardiff to sign him next year, and I'd be quite keen to see that. But
if he's not getting game time in Exeter, you'd be like,
well, I noticed today that
they
signed Tom Hooper Exeter, didn't they? The Australian lad. And in Rob Baxter's comments, he says, it'd be great to have him competing with these players in the like type 5 and stuff. And there's no mention of Christ Shunza on that list. So I'm sort of at 2 and 2 equals 15 there. But anyway, I as much as I'm a fan of his, I sort of go on along the lines of, if you're not playing, I don't really see how you can get into the Wales squad unless in exceptional circumstances like Wilgrave John at tight head. I think if you're like a James Fender, I know he gets sent off, but he's playing quite well for the Ospreys. Whenever he's available, he pretty much starts for the Ospreys, and he's had a few tough injuries, but has been in good form. And you're kind of looking at Shunza getting in and thinking, well, sort of what's the point of me playing really well whenever I'm available, really? And yeah, I think you're going to end up with like Seb Davis maybe get called in to join training, and you don't turn that opportunity down, but there must be a little like devil on the left shoulder that says, no, fuck them, they're not picking you, why are you going to turn up to help them with training? But for Teddy himself, there's a really good opportunity to get in a Test match 23 there, because he's been in around the squad a little bit. He's only got 2 caps, but I think if you assume Dav Jenkins definitely is involved in the match day 23, and then it's probably Will Rowlands likely gets in there for sheer size. I think you're probably looking at a battle between Teddy and Freddie Thomas then for the other second row spot. And as well as Freddie has been playing at Gloucester, I'd certainly back Teddy to do a job there off the bench if needed.
I mean, one thing I think Teddy's got going for him is he is calling Cardiff lineouts now, which is something he hasn't been doing. He wasn't doing in the past, and having that extra lineout nose might be helpful. Particularly with Dav Jenkins still being quite young to it all, though as extra captain. Speaking of the no game time, Wilgrave John I didn't think he was still playing.
Well, I had to. I think I googled Wilgrave John. I'm pretty sure he's not on the Sale website. I was like, is that like he's not yet got a picture of him or whatever? I was like, Is that Wilgrave gone? Is there a young guy that's out there who I've never heard of? I just had no idea it was him.
Wilgriff John Jr.
Yeah, bizarre.
It's
I think
the Sale website thing is particularly funny because it's his second stint there as well. So surely they could just like find the old profile and bring it back in or something.
Yeah,
It is tight head is mad though. Like the lack of depth that we've got there at the moment. Like it's, I think Gatland has clearly had it with Dylan Lewis. I don't know what's happened there, but he does not fancy him at all. I know he's not playing a huge amount, but at least he's sort of playing
He
semi-regularly.
never used to play that much for us when he was getting picked all the time because he was always behind Dimitri Ahe.
Unlikely it is he's going to come off the bench for Wales. You know, I think Henry Thomas is in decent form for the Scarlets, and Azza's playing well for us. So I have no problem with them two. First choice Thomas starting, Azza coming off the bench. But you know that third choice, if one of them, say one of them goes down in a captain's run or something in Paris on that Thursday night or Friday night. And then Will Griff-John's turning up off the back of like 60 odd minutes so far this season. I watched a bit of Sale's game away at Stormers on Saturday, and he scrummaged well. Don't get me wrong; that they had a real good dig at that Stormers pack in the scrum, but he may as well have not been there in open play. To be honest, he offered nothing outside of the scrum.
To be fair, that seems to be what Gatland wants is no open play anyway. So, the thing I find hilarious is how many like mid 30, 32, 33, 34-year-olds there are. And then he says, I didn't select Gap Anscombe because he's too old.
That's my overriding. That's my overriding thought on the squad is that it raises more questions than answers on the basis of he gets kept on Gatland and Tierney comes out just before Christmas and says we've challenged him to like achieve success or whatever the line was in 2025. Doesn't specify what success is at all. Like so, but I think generally you can boil it down to there's two ways you can look at success for this Wales team is either winning games or building for 2027 or building over the next like 12 months to be successful in 2026 or however long they want to give you to build the team. And this squad doesn't really point to either of those being the case because he says I'm not picked Anscombe because I want to build depth ahead of 2027 World Cup for fly halves. That's fine. But then he drops Winnett and recalls 33-year-old Liam Williams and he drops not saying they deserve to be in, but somebody like Alex Mann, say, or Josh McLeod, even Tame Basham, one of the younger back rowers, and brings Talupe Faletau back. And those are decisions which say to me, I want to win now. I want the experience of Liam Williams and Talupe Faletau there. But then potentially playing 22-year-old Dan Edwards uncapped as your 10 away in Paris in round one doesn't say to me, I want to win now. That says to me, I'm building for something. So it's a very confusing team selection in that regard.
The big thing for me, and it's one of the conversations I've had both private and on the Rap podcast, is we're having our fourth campaign. We're having our fourth completely different set of centres. It's good because it's going to be a different set of centres. I mean, they might go to Owen Watkin and Joe Roberts, which looked pretty good during the Six Nations. But, we went from starting with what we finished World Cup with, which was Tompkins. So you've got a decent distributor, but a bit of a chaos monkey. Not very good for outside a young 10. Which is great when you've got two young and experienced 10s, one of whom doesn't play 10 at club level. And then you had George North, big strike runner. And by the end of that, we ended up with Owen Watkin, your defensive captain at 13, and then Mason Grady as a battering ram. We sort of persisted with that a bit in the summer, again with variation. And then we went, no, what we're going to have is a playmaking 12 and strike runner 13 with another strike runner at 14, which where, someone like Ellis me makes sense, actually. No, we're getting rid of that now. Now we're going to either go with the youth and have Eddie James and Joe Roberts, fantastic club combination. Eddie James, decent hands on him. Good, good striker, but he is raw at this level. Joe Roberts, I mean, a lot of people saying it probably is our best option at 13 in the long run. Or you could be going Watkin and Tompkins, or Tompkins and Watkin, which, as I said, I like Tompkins. I think he's a great player. I just don't think he's the sort of player you need when you've got a 10 trying to learn the ropes, who's also then got to manage his bundle of energy. Watkin just doesn't, you've got, and then if that's your midfield, whether it's Dan Edwards, Ben Thomas thing, other than Eddie James, none of those centres for me can make an impact, and we don't have a pack that can make an impact. I don't think there's any big ball carriers there. James Botham will get through the work. Felipe Falto can get through something with his feet. Gatland's been talking about using Aaron Wainwright more in the midfield. Again, he's not really a game line buster. He will get you quick ball, but you won't make yards. You're not going to convince defenses that way. And I'm just sat there just looking. Can you just say you're going for one ball? It's going to be all pick and goal, short around the ruck, and we're going to kick to compete, and hope that it works, because that's sort of the only game plan I can see with that squad. So I don't think we're going to necessarily out scrimmage teams. I don't think we've necessarily got the dominant scrimmages for that. I don't think we've got our maul might be great, but let's be fair. Given the tombola our line out is, would you absolute chaos, terrible. At least one of those games, and you've just basically every time we go into Wales camp, a Wales period, we've thrown away the previous one effectively because we're getting rid of it. First of all, it was all about youth. And, we had the Alex Manns, we had the Mackenzie Martins. Yes, we had some injuries from that. Right, they've got dropped, they're gone. Then it's, these are our guys. Now they've been dropped. Now we've got some new guys, and now they've been dropped. I mean, if these are the last, Gatland's last 5 games in charge, great, because we're going to be starting from scratch. So what's the point? Frankly.
Yeah. It's increasingly, I'm becoming increasingly convinced that Sean Edwards was really, really important to Gatland and having him there, because it just seems so confused, and the game plan, I haven't known what the game plan is since he's come back, really. It's like you're saying, he's changed so many combinations and ideas, and is he fully committing to what he used to do or not? It all doesn't really make sense when I'm seeing on the pitch and then listening to him speak. He's got no motivation. It comes across so he sighs at everything he says, and then he always implies that this is negative energy coming from outside and it's unfair, and it's just so blind to reality. The fact you've lost 13 games in a row. What do you want people to be saying about your team? But I can see green shoots coming through. It's what are you talking about? I don't see what his role is. He's not motivated. I can't imagine anyone speaking to him and coming out of a meeting and be like, bloody hell, I can't wait to play with this guy. He's just got this so dour tone all the time. I don't know. I'm starting to lose faith in him and think that, he was reliant on other people around him other than him dictating what needs to be done. And I hope he proves me wrong in the Six Nations and we come out and it shows something. But it is looking I'm a bit worried about his, tenure.
He said I listened to the Scrum 5 podcast on the way home today, and he said something along the lines of because they were talking about potentially somebody coming in, I think is going to join the management team in some sort of like mental state coach or something like that, or motivator, or team culture builder or something, some sort of corporate jargon along those lines. And he said, we're looking to remove the doom and gloom around the squad. I just thought, okay, resign then, mate. It's gone straight away then. As soon as you hand your notice in, there's no more doom and gloom. We're probably quite excited, actually, for what this squad can achieve, because like Harley said, the constant chopping and changing. And as soon as we lose in Paris, he'll say, the attack just doesn't click again. They just need time to become cohesive, and actually, it can't always be the players aren't gelling. The players are good players. They're not the great golden generation, but they're good rugby players, and a competent coach could turn them into a good team. The sort of common denominator in all these attacks not gelling is the coach, unfortunately. So it's I'd be interested if anyone out there is a bookmaker. Please feel free to send me odds on Gatland not making it to the end of the Six Nations.
Yeah, so I mean, I was talking about it who really takes over, who wants to take over, but I mean, at the end of the day, the one thing that would have been really good bit of confidence is, Gatland was talking about this review and it got presented in December. Well, you had a good couple of months of action, announcing some coaches coming. Whether it is literally they're just getting a mental skills coach in, then fine. But just announce it, something of confidence. I'm sure if Humph ever meets me, he's going to be very annoyed with me because the amount of times I've basically been calling for him to lose his job. But like that for me was a common denominator since the 2019 World Cup is our line out has been catastrophic. We can't because it's just so inconsistent. Our scrum is hit and miss. Our phase, the way our path build, our attacking shape is just like that's your job. Like, how are we always getting blasted off of breakdowns? Like, and how have we got to a point where our line out only works if Adam Beard is in there? Is that just because Adam Beard is actually coaching the line out? Is this what the issue is?
Maybe that's the announcement of this new coaching staff person. Is Adam Beard's going to be the line out coach, and when he comes back, then he's just going to do both. Wouldn't surprise me if they brought a scrum coach in, though. I'd be like if a Roundtree is available or something, and he fancies a short-term.
What do you mean if a Roundtree is available? A Roundtree is available.
Well, he's out of a job, but he doesn't necessarily mean he wants a job.
There was a little murmur on Wales Online about the scrum coaches work like England, the Red Roses, and various other things. He's supposedly being lined up to be announced.
It was the Northampton guy, isn't it? He's leaving Northampton at the end of the season, but he'll be available then. But I wonder if Roundtree just comes in part time during the Six Nations and until they sack Gatland.
They might be doing might have cut a deal and said, "Well, you can do that because the Premiership isn't running during Six Nations." Yeah, because I think they get both those weeks off because of the way they got an extra 2 weeks in. When they played. It's
Prem Cup, isn't it? That's what they played during the Six Nations.
They might.
No, it's not proper rugby. Yeah.
Sack that off. I don't think Saints are in there in the Prem Cup actually.
It's still group stage, I think. So everybody's in it.
They finished it. I thought this was in knockouts or whatever.
No, it was last season. Last season they did that because it was Rugby World Cup, but where it's back to normal this season, they've done all the group stage and the knockouts in Six Nations time, I think.
Anyway, but that's one of the things. But that for me is one. And again, there's no point blaming the attack coach because the attack coach is basically like, "Oh, here you go. Here's my plans. Here's my set plays. Oh, great. So now I don't have a big centre. Now I've got to find something else, some other way to make this work now. Oh, thanks, Gats. That's fucking great." Right. I think that's basically everything we want to discuss. Unless there's anything anyone wants to raise. I'm not even gonna bother asking where we come in the Six Nations. So that's for later pods. There has been a bit of news I've heard, which is whether through injuries or they just don't like us. The Sharks are allegedly sending full noise up to the Arms Park.
It's childish, isn't it?
Yeah, come on, man. Just because we've got a 3-game winning streak over you, I mean, come on. I mean, if you're not careful and you lose that one, you could end up like the next Dragons. One of those teams that just never wins against us. Think about that before you start sending Sia Khaleesi. So I mean, that is one thing. Is if it's going to be full noise, Sia Khaleesi, a chance to see Sia Khaleesi and Ebenezer at cap. So get your tickets in for that. And then a bit closer, obviously, we are playing the Cheetahs on Friday night at 8:00. Not the Cheetahs. We're playing Connacht at 8:00. My brain has actually fried. You're witnessing a mental breakdown on air, and I think that is a very good time for us to end. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Frazier, for joining me and just about keeping me in the realms of reality. Thank you all for listening and putting up with me. I'm off to go have a long nap. Good night.
That was the Cardiff Central Podcast. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us again next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.